Okay, so the last few days we talked about Megillah, and then we talked about Suda. So let's just sort of polish off the issue with Mishloach Manot. So just to make it simple, I gave you Rev Rimon's summary. This is from the original version of the book. I'll show you in a second the new version of the book that Shmuel David lent me for a bit. So there is a classic Hakira, which I'm not 100% convinced is true, but I'll present it to you as it's classically put, as to what is the goal of Mishloach Manot. So the Truman Adeshan was asked the following question. Who's the Truman Adeshan? Ezra. Truman Adeshan is Rabbi Isserline? Isserline. Yeah. You have years on him yet? Very good. Right, so he's late 14th, but mostly 15th century Germany. He's one of the most important poskim ever. We've mentioned it before that according to Schechter, he has the clean sweep, that all 354 of his tshuvot are mentioned at some points in Shulchan Aruch and Oseh Kelim. Which again, I cannot attest to this. I don't know Shulchan Aruch or Oseh Kelim well enough to know that it's true, and I definitely don't know the Tshuvah of Truman Adeshan well enough to know it. But he's a very important posek. So he was asked the following question: Sheila, bnei adam sholchim lechavreihem bepurim chalukim v'sadinim v'chayagavna yotzim midei mishloach manot olav. What if someone, instead of sending food, sends clothing or other presents, sheets or whatever? Are you yotzei? So the way this is classically presented is the following: is what is the purpose of Mishloach Manot? So one way of looking at Mishloach Manot, again, I'm not totally convinced whether it's Klakira, but I'm going to present to you the classic way it's presented. Well, we might qualify it a bit, but let's present it. So what's the question? Why would you say yes? Why would you say no?
Okay, so Mishloach Manot neither contains, it does not mention food. And so if you want to just like...
Okay, so in a technical level, you might say, it doesn't technically say food. It says manot, which is like portions. Fine. Okay, but conceptually, what would you say is the purpose of Mishloach Manot such that you would say you don't need food?
Trying to increase the,
Very good. Right? Rami says, look, if the point is to increase happiness and friendship and camaraderie, so maybe it matters less what you send, and it's more important that you send, right? So, like, look, if I send, if I give Yaakov a can of Coke and a cookie, maybe he'll be happy. If I send him on a hike, he'll be happier. If I give him a car, I don't know if he's happy. I don't know if he wants a car, but whatever, right? So if you think it's about happiness or camaraderie, so maybe you could entertain that it could be non-food. If you wanted to limit to food, so either you say, look, formally, maybe manot really means food, or more substantively, you might say that what's the purpose of Mishloach Manot? Right, to contribute to Seudah, because if you look at the Gemara, the classic cases of Mishloach Manot are people actually bringing food to the Seudah, maybe swapping meals, right? And this is in many ways the easiest way to do Mishloach Manot, is that you have a Seudah with friends, in the time when that was something that we did, that you went to other people's houses, and you bring 2 dishes as part of Mishloach Manot to their house, right, to contribute to the Seudah. You basically say, oh, you're making the main course, so I'll bring a salad and a kugel and milk, right? You contribute to the Seudah. In which case, it wouldn't work. So the Truman Adeshan says, Yir'ed ein yotzim bahem, din yir'ed sam Mishloach Manot, ukadei she'yeh l'kol echad dai v'sapek l'kayem aseudah kedina. He says, I think you don't fulfill, because he takes the position that the purpose of Mishloach Manot is to ensure that everyone has enough for their meal. Now again, you could formulate it in different ways. It's to everyone have part of the meal, it's related conceptually to the Seudah. But the point is, if it's conceptually related to the Seudah and the parties and all that, so it absolutely has to be food. If it's just about happiness and camaraderie, yes, Ezra.
Why is Mishloach Manot needed to have?
Then why is it what? Right, so that's why maybe the Truman Adeshan's formulation is a bit too strong, right? Maybe it's not to make sure that everyone has a meal, because obviously it doesn't, because 10 people could give to one person and the other 9 people get nothing, right? But you could say it a little bit differently, that it's part of the Yemei Mishteh V'Simcha, right, which is all about contributing to the partying, which includes especially giving to those in most in need, but even just amongst friends to make sure that people are eating and drinking, but it's related to the Suda, right? So that's why Truman Adeshin's formulation might be a bit strong, but there are different ways of saying a similar thing, which is that the point of Mishloach Manot is to some way contribute to the Seudah. Okay? But I think you're right? A strong formulation is a bit hard to defend. On the other side of the Chakira, people classically put the Manot HaLevi. Now this is one of those very weird things, because first of all, this is the only time that I'm aware of, basically, when anybody bothers quoting the Manot HaLevi at all in a halachic context. Because who is the Manot HaLevi? The Manot HaLevi is Shlomo Alkabetz, who's very famous, but not for halachic writings. What did he write? Very good. He wrote Lecha Dodi. He was a Kabbalist living in Tzfat who wrote Lecha Dodi. That's what he's known for. He was a Kabbalist, but he wrote a Parish on Esther, and in Perek Tet, when it talks about Mishloach Manot, he writes, and the Bach quotes it, a similar idea, right? He says, "Tam Mishloach Manot G'dei she'samech v'sasim u'avav v'reyav." The point of it is to be happy with your friends, ulahashkin b'neim avav achva v'reyut, to increase brotherhood and friendship. So, again, it's sort of weird to take this as like a halachic position. He's writing Parshanut, and sure, that may be the purpose of it, but that doesn't mean it's the surah, right? We always have to distinguish between the philosophy behind it and the actual surah ha-mitzvah. And it could be that the point is to make people happy, but the way you do that is by contributing to a potential suda. But some have argued that according to Manot HaLevi, not only is this the purpose behind it to create friendship, but it's actually the surah, right? That it's sending a present that will make people happy, and therefore it doesn't have to be food. If I give Yaakov a car, right, and send him on a tiyul and whatever, right, give him a scholarship to college, right, then I was Mekayim Mishloach Manot. And like I said, I'm not totally convinced by this because I tend to think Manot HaLevi is saying this more philosophically than halachically. But fine. What's the nafkamina? So besides the nafkamina here as to whether possibly you could use things that aren't food, it has an expression in our sugya of the question of Purim Meshulash. Why?
When do you actually get them?
Right, very good. Because if you say that it's part of the Suda, so then what's the right day to give Mishloach Manot? Whatever day you think you're supposed to do the Suda, which since the consensus is basically to do it Sunday, then it should be on Sunday. But if it's just about creating Achva, V'Shalom, V'Reyus, so then what days are in play? It could be Shabbat. It could be Friday, right? Now, maybe you'd say don't do it on Shabbat because either Kenyan or Gzera Derabba that they might carry, right? Or something like that. But potentially it'd be Friday with the Megillah, meaning once you say that it's not more to the Suda, so then it could be that it's any other day. So the Chazon Ish has another position, which is maybe, and this is what Ezra was getting at, is maybe there's another reason to do it on Friday and not on Sunday, and that is, right, what does the Chazon Ish say? You have it right here. Is that at some level you might argue that the proper pairing is not Mishloach Manot with Suda, but what's the proper pairing? Matanot Levyonit, right? That whatever you think Mishloach Manot is, it's closer in concept to Matanot Levyonit, because Suda is your own rejoicing, and Mishloach Manot and Matanot Levyonit are causing other people to rejoice, both your economic equals and your economic, I'm not going to say inferiors, but those who are less blessed than you economically. So if you say that it's more conceptually linked to Matan Lev Yonim, and Matan Lev Yonim is in turn linked to which mitzvah? Megillah.
Yeah.
So then you might say that you do it on Friday. And of course, if you want to be machmir, as always, you do it both, right? Do it both. So what do you do? La halacha, right? So that's so. Before we look at Rav Ovadiah's summary and flesh it a little bit out more, right? I gave you. So one of the things, this is just like good knowledge to know in general, right? Rav Yosef Rimon, who I quoted, right? His godless is really organization, right? Rabbi Eli Fisher has a shir where he notes that, it's very hard for rabbis in the modern age where information is cheap and you can find information everywhere to stay relevant, right? And he notes that there are certain rabbis that manage to stay relevant even though information is cheap. And one of his examples of people who manage to stay relevant is Rav Rimon, because what does Rav Rimon do, right? Once getting information is easy, so what skill becomes more important? Organization. That's Rav Rimon's godless. So in the newer versions of his book, he constantly has these amazing, wonderful color-coded charts, which didn't come out in the copy that I gave you as a chart, right? But he gets these wonderful color-coded, what are they called? Flow charts, right? Which basically summarize all the halacha for you. So he's a clear writer, and he has all these pictures, and it's really, really quite helpful. So he has a little bit more in his in this version than he does in the version I gave you. He says, first of all, right, according to some Rishonim, he notes, the Meiri says you shouldn't do it on Shabbat because of Shema Yavir, right? So that is a technicality. Even if in practice you should give it in Shabbat, on Shabbat. So he says, what do you do la halacha? So he says that these are the positions. You have the Morduk Tzia, and who writes that you should actually do it on Shabbat. Right? What's the logic? If it's not connected to Suda, so it's connected to the Etzem Hayom, and if you're not worried about Shema Yavir, right, so then you would do it on Shabbat.
So what is that connected?
Of course, they say you should make sure there's Neiruv, but they don't think the Gzeira applies to it. Now, the reason you could say you put it on Shabbat is either you think it's unmoored from Suda, or you poskin like the Ritva, who says that the proper day for the Suda for people in Yerushalayim for Mishulash is Shabbat. Rov poskim, however, say that you should do it on Sunday because they poskin the Suda should be on Sunday, and they connect Mishloach Manot to Suda. The Chazon Ish, as I said, thinks that you should do it on Friday because he thinks it's more connected to Matanot Lev Yonim. So, just to summarize both of those issues, and I gave you the chart. So, Matanot Lev Yonim, everyone agrees, is on the day you read the Megillah, because it's conceptually linked to the Megillah, and since everybody agrees that, when are you supposed to read the Megillah? On Friday. On Friday, so that Matanot Lev Yonim is definitely on Friday. Sudat Purim. So the Yerushalmi says you don't do it on Shabbat, right? It seems to say that. So when does that mean? So the Ritva thinks Ein Lidchot, but he Paskin, no, you really do it on Shabbat. That's the Ritva's position. The Ra'ah says you do it on Friday, but Rov Shitot holds that you do it on Sunday, but maybe they're machmir to have, as we saw, a little bit of an enhanced meal on Shabbat as well. Mishloach Manot, you have three possibilities. On Friday, because of Chazon Ish position that Mishloach Manot is conceptually related to Matanot Lev Yonim. On Shabbat, because maybe you think it's about friendship, or maybe you think it's connected to Suda, but you think that the Suda is on Shabbat, or you do it on Sunday, either because of Gzeira Shema Yitalta or Raman Shuzar Rabin, that you're worried that you might carry it. So there could be a technicality, which is why you do it on Sunday, or fundamentally, if you think the Suda is supposed to be on Sunday, and you think that Matanot Lev Yonim is connected to the Suda, so then you should do it on Sunday. And he said, but the minhag is to do it on Sunday, but there are some people who are machmir on Friday, and some who are machmir not only on Friday, but they're machmir even on Shabbat, and maybe, they give it 3 times, as long as they make sure not to carry. Again, this doesn't apply to us, obviously, because none of us live in Yerushalayim. We all live in But you can guilt Rabbi Sklar into giving you Mishloach Manot on Friday, and then again on Shabbat if you were in Yerushalayim, which you're not going to be, but if you were, and then again on Sunday, guilt him to giving you Mishloach Manot again. Tell him that it's the frum thing to do, and see how that works. I don't know. Maybe you can also convince him of the Monar Levi that really he should be giving you something other than food that'll make you happy, and I don't know, maybe he'll give you a car on Friday and a scholarship to college on Sunday and Shalom Al Yisrael. I don't know. I don't know what his financial situation is like, and whether, I assume that Migdal doesn't pay him enough to do that, but, I don't know what he does in his, I do know what he does in the rest of his life, but I don't know if editing pays that much either. Fine. So, as a summary of some of these issues, though, I just gave you Ribbavad, yeah? And we'll just run through it a little bit here. Where Ravadia says, Toshav Yerushalayim Shishalach Manot L'Reya B'Yom Shishi Yudal Adar Shiyom Kriyat HaMegillah Ki Shechal Tedvav Adar L'Yad B'Shabbat. If someone in Yerushalayim gave to Mishloach Manot on Friday, when Shisha and Purim should be on Shabbat, Ha'im Yatsa Yidei Chova Mishloach Manot, does he fulfill his obligation? O Shema Chayav Hu Lachzor V'Lishloach Manot L'Reya B'Yom Rishon Tet Zayin B'Adar. Does he have to give it on Tet Zayin? So he says, the Truman Adershan writes that the reason for the mitzvah tam is Mishloach Manot Kedei She'ef Sharut L'Kol Echad L'Kayim Mitzvah Sudat Purim K'Halacha. Right? The Truman Adershan says that the reason for it is to contribute to the Suda. And therefore the time should be whenever you have the Suda. So therefore the And according to that, since the majority position of the Suda is on Sunday, so Mishloach Manot should be on Sunday as well. And he quotes the Yerushalmi, and the Rif, etc., and the Eshko, and Shulchan Aruch, unlike Ram Chaviv, who says, Pasuk Halacha L'Maisa, Kayim Mitzvah Purim Shabbat, V'dach, Divrei Yerushalmi, Halacha, V'chein Gadol, Rabbeinu Tzarfat, V'tshuva. He says, he notes that there were those who said you should do it on Shabbat, the Ritvam, Ram Chaviv. He says, no, but we don't pass in that way. The majority position, you do the Suda on Sunday. And therefore he says, 3 lines down on the second page, which one should you move earlier? Rak mitzvah matanot le'evyonim mikdimu chazal yom shishi yom kriyatam megilah b'nishon einayim shel aniyim nesuot mikra megilah v'yom kriya megilah mirov chibar aneis alev patuach l'ravacha l'trom l'aniyim b'ayim yafeh b'ruach nediva. Now he gives an explanation which we didn't really provide before. But why is it that matanot le'evyonim is connected to the Megillah? So Ravadia says because while people are reading the Megillah and thinking about the mitzvah and the nes, that's when they're more generous. Okay. I don't know if it's true. Do you feel most generous after the Megillah? I feel like people are most generous when they're drunk. I don't know. I don't know.
That's why my shul makes sure that we put that around as kiddush before we have our options.
Smart. I mean, not smart, but smart. Smart in a cynical way. He notes, however, the Reb Levi ben Chaviv paskin that you should do Mishloach Manot on Shabbat, because the oldest Suda is Shabbat. But since we don't paskin make our din, the Suda should be on Shabbat, so then we shouldn't have Mishloach Manot on Shabbat. And he notes that many of the Achronim didn't like this because they said, right, if we're worried about Mikra Megillah on Shabbat, because you might carry, so which are people more likely to carry? The Megillah? Right? If I had to ask you, which zera would you rather set up? Don't read Megillah because you might forget how to read Megillah and go carry your Megillah to someone to read it, and that'll lead you to carrying Shabbat. Or you might go Mishloach Manot delivering and might end up carrying on Shabbat. Which is more likely? I would have said 100% Mishloach Manot. So therefore the Achronim said, Mapidom, if we're worried about Megillah, you should be worried for sure about Mishloach Manot.
Oh, and because they didn't say that, therefore we know it's okay.
Right, and he says that, no, and therefore he says the majority disagree and say, obviously it shouldn't be on Shabbat. And that's what he quotes the Michtam, the Yocham Chaim, the Meirei. And therefore he says the minhag is to do it on Sunday with the Suda, which is the minhag to do on Sunday. He does note, however, that bidi avad, right, if you already gave it on Friday, he would think you would be Yotzei, right? That's his psak, because even though Me'ikra Din, we think you should do it on Sunday, since there's enough Shitot that you could do it then, so then you could do it on Friday. And he quotes the Chazon Ish, who says that maybe it's better to do it on Friday to be Machmir, like the Sefer HaMichdam, who thinks that the Suda should also be then. And therefore he says, yes, L'chatchila, he thinks you should do it on Sunday, but if you already gave it on Friday, so then he thinks, B'di'eved, you are Yotze Yedei Chova. Fine. Let me just skip down here. So therefore, if you just look at it, skip all the way to his conclusion. B'sikum mitzvah Mishloach Manot l'toshevei Yerushalayim k'chal tedvav b'adar b'Shabbat sheichal yot b'yom Aleph tetzayin b'adar. People live in Yerushalayim, and this year should do it on Sunday. Shu yom kiyum mitzvah seudat Purim. Ach v'diavad, but post facto, if he did it, shekvar kshalach manot l're'eh b'yudaled, and he sent it on Friday, yatsa yedei chovato. Mikol makom, nevertheless, kevan shekol amar b'l'shloach l're'im arezim mishubach. Since the more people you send it to, the better. If you did give it on Friday, still, it'd be nice to be machmir and to give it on Sunday again, because what's wrong? So you'll make more friends, right? Tamid Kev. I mean, I think how many of us actually limit ourselves to only giving the Mishloach Manot that we're chayiv in, right? I assume most of us give more than that. The other thing, it makes more friends in everything. I don't think it's a bad thing, right? If you gave it, so you might as well give more, etc.
I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Like, I guess then that's directly really off of it. Or just like, if you have like cooked like one big, or like cooked like a big dish, and like you gave it to like two different. And like you had two.
Mishloach Manot is 2 dishes to 1 person.
Oh, okay.
Matan Levionim is 1 to 2. Mishloach Manot is 2 to 1. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. And this should be clear, but since this year we're focusing on Purim Meshulash issues, right? I assume you all know the basic halachot of Mishloach Manot, which is 2 different foods to 1 person, and the brachot thing is a myth. Please never quote that at me. It's annoying. Yeah. It does not have to be 2 things of separate brachot. It has to be 2 different types of food. So chicken and meatloaf is fine, right? That's fine. That's Lumahadrin.
But technically like Mike and Ike, or like candy and like chocolate might not, because like it's. We could quibble about things that might be the same food. Like different forms of chocolate are probably one type of food. Enochanamin. But that's not because of the bracha, right? I know, of course, if you ask me, you won't get the right. You won't, as you know, the bracha I make on chocolate is not the bracha you make on chocolate. So, if it were a bad bracha, we would get very different answers. But it's not. Me, I make ha'etz. Why do I make ha'etz? Why do I make ha'etz? So, the reason is because nobody knows why you shouldn't make ha'etz. Obviously, the right bracha for chocolate is ha'etz. 100% the right bracha is ha'etz. Why? Because cocoa beans are inedible raw. And the general rule is that if something is inedible in its raw state, its naturally eaten state is processed, then you make shahako in its raw state, and you make the proper bracha only in its processed state. So like in the time of the Gemara, no one had raw onions. So the Gemara says that raw onions are shahako and cooked onions are hadama. Right? Right? So chocolate seems to be the type of thing where the cocoa bean is inedible. Right? Its processed state is its naturally eaten state by most normal human beings. And the cocoa bean grows on a tree. And therefore it should be high. I mean, it's more complicated than that. But more or less that's the getting into all the nuances can get complicated, but more or less that's the reason it probably should be ha'etz. No one really knows why we say shahako. Rosh Zalman is a tshuva where he says, really it should be ha'etz. Obviously it should be ha'etz, but maybe you should say shahako because that's like the minhag. He backed down, but Meikar din is clearly ha'etz. So I have such cognitive dissonance. It's more complicated than this. But when I went through the sugya, I had such cognitive dissonance, and I couldn't bring myself to say shahakal on chocolate. So I talked to Rabbi Weeder at the time, and I was just like, I can't handle it. I just can't do it. It's obviously ha'etz. It's just so obviously ha'etz. It's meant to be eaten this way. So he said, I will take all the gehenim that you get for saying the proper bracha on chocolate. So I took that as a heter, and since then I don't tell my kids to do it because I don't need my kids to be weird. One day I'll learn the sugya with them if they're convinced they can do it themselves. Rabbi Yashiv is quoted as saying that you should say shahakal, except if you're having like raisinets or chocolate-covered almonds, you should obviously say 8, because Rav Moshe has this very weird tshuva that he used to say 2 brachot, which is seemingly wrong for 100 reasons. One is that it violates the rules of Ikra and Tafel. It's one food. You should just pick a bracha, not 2. But as Rabbi Yashiv says, the bigger problem is everyone knows that Ikra and chocolate should be ha'etz. So maybe the minhag is to say shahakal, but you're going to have a chocolate-covered almond and say 2 brachot, but both foods are supposed to be ha'etz. So in such a case, obviously the right thing to do is ha'etz. So even if you don't agree with me, that you should, and you continue to say shahakal, on chocolate-covered almonds or raisins, please do me a favor and say ha'etz. So that's the obvious bracha for 100 different reasons. Yeah. So that's totally, it's a fascinating sugya, but totally beside the point. Just remember to give your Mishloach Manot. Do remember to do that, guys. So 2 foods. Yeah, 2 foods to one person. Okay. So that's in terms of Mishloach Manot, and we've dealt with Megillah and Matanot Levyonim. The question then in terms of Al Hanisim. So what about Al Hanisim? So, one second. I know I give this to you. So Al Hanisim and Shechayanu, and just to give you, I said I would give you a summary. So now I'm not going to get too much into Lumdus, but let's just get it. What about Al Hanisim? So the Beit Yosef writes, Matati katuv sheminhag Yerushalayim ligvot ma'ot matanot aniyim lechalkam bo bayom v'nomrim bo Al Hanisim. Beit Yosef said the minhag is not to say it on Friday. What's the logic to not say it on Friday? You tell me. So we talked about it, right? Meaning Friday is not really Purim. It's just the Zman Mikra Megillah, right? But really Purim is Tetvav, right? Uvi Shabbat Yom Tetvav Shu Yom Purim Omer Al Hanisim Umotziyin Bo Shnei Dvarim Mikorim B'Sheni V'Vom Malek. He said, so people have the minhag on Friday they don't say Al Hanisim, on Shabbat they do, and they read the proper parsha. What's that? Conceptually, what are they saying? They're viewing it as Friday isn't Zman Mikra Megillah. Sorry, Friday is Zman Mikra Megillah, but it's not Purim, right? But if you conceptualize Friday as Purim, either because you think it's part of the Ikar Takana or you think it's Yom Kriya Lakol, right? So then, or you think that Al Hanisim is not connected to the Kedusha Hayom, but connected to what? Mikra Megillah, because it's part of PURIM-Mishloach. So whenever I do Mikra Megillah, I should say Al Hanisim. Then when would you say Al Hanisim? On Friday. So the Yosef himself says, I think you should say it when you read the Megillah. So he writes that the minhag is to not say Al Hanisim on Friday, but he doesn't understand it. That's what he writes in the Beit Yosef. And the Shulchan Aruch, even though he doesn't understand it, he paskins that you should say Al Hanisim on Shabbat and not Friday. And again, the logic seems to be that conceptually they're viewing Purim as being on Shabbat, and Friday being Zman Mikra Megillah, either, but not part of the original Takana, right? Meaning it's not that Friday is Purim, and Shabbat is Purim. Friday is when you read, which, as we saw, may hang on some of the things that we talk about. This does get a little bit complicated in terms of people who are traveling. Fine. What about on Sunday? So, you don't say it on Sunday. If you did say, you don't have to be choser, because conceptually it does seem to be related enough to modem that it's not considered a hefsek. Some people, to be machmir, do say it in the Su'udah, right? Because it is Su'udat Purim, but they don't say it in a normal place. They say it at the end. By Harachaman, which is a way of getting it in there, but without too much right? Because on the one hand, Sunday is clearly not Purim, but on the other hand, it's sort of weird not saying the Suda. So, it's this compromise position that some people say it at Harachaman, but they don't say it at the end. And again, when it comes to, as I said, if you accidentally did say it, to the post can assume that you don't have to go back. So that's all. Anisim. What about Shechayanu? So Shechayanu is interesting. Why? Because what's the minhag Ashkenaz? The minhag, right? When should you clearly say Shechayanu? Megillah reading at night. What about during the day? What's the problem? You're saying it's the second time you're doing it. So the minhag Ashkenaz is say Shechayanu on Mikra Megillah B'Yom. But how do we deal with the problem that you already said the Megillah the night before?
Oh, you have a new fruit.
No. You have in mind that what? Yeah, that you're saying it on the Mitzvah Hayom. So that works in a normal year. What's the problem?
You're not doing that then.
That on this year you're not doing it because, as we said, the minhag is to give Mishloach Manot on Sunday, right? So what are you going to do? Yeah, you're doing Matan Lev Yonim. Yeah, in a Chanami. So what do? So, and Rami will be happy. What's the minhag? Some people are machmir, get a new fruit, put on new clothes, right? On Sunday, to say Shechayanu then, and be Makayim the mid, right? Shechayanu, right then, because otherwise Shechayanu isn't covered by the one on Friday. Rosh Zalman or Bilyashiv say you don't have to do that. Have in mind on Friday, Shechayanu for all the mitzvah that you're doing over the next 3 days, no problem. So yes, it covers Matan Lev Yonim on Friday.
You fruit on Sunday, not on Friday.
No, because on Friday, you're right, it'll go on Matan Lev Yonim and Mikra Megillah and whatever. But what about Mishloach Manot? How is it going to be covered on Sunday? So it's a mitzvah Yom. So you're clearly not going to say a separate Shechayanu. So Rosh Zalman says, don't worry, just think about it on Friday for the whole Purim season of 3 days. Some people apparently say that he quotes here that the Hilchot Chag B'Chag and the Dini Purim Meshulash-R.J say that the minhag is to put on new clothes. I love it. This is a cop out for everything. It was like I was giving shir by the girls on last week on saying a bracha on the vaccine, right? So there are people who say Tova Meitiv, like Rosh Hashanah. There are people who say Shechayanu, which is what I said. I thought that was the proper bracha. And there are people, whatever. Right? People say you say no bracha. You just say Yehiratzon or some sort of Mizmor Latoda. What? So the general rule is that Shechayanu you say on something which is Simcha for you, and Atov HaMeitim something that's Simcha for you and others. So Rosh Hashanah's argument is basically, it's not just a joy for you, it's contributing to herd immunity, and it protects other people, and therefore it's a classic case of not Simcha for you, but Simcha for you and for other people.
Isn't Shechayanu though meant to be something not only a Simcha for you, but usually based on something that I wouldn't say annual, but scheduled?
No. It's the opposite. It's new. Now, it can be seasonal, but it's either new or seasonal, right? But with fruit, you're right. Meaning a new fruit is very problematic that you say Shechayanu unless it's a seasonal new fruit, right? But a new clothing, everyone agrees. That's classic case in Gemara. You buy new clothes, you say Shechayanu, right? It's either something new or something seasonal and new, right? A new fruit for you may not fit in that category. It's not new quite enough, whatever. Or it might. But, whatever it is. So, but there were, obviously there are people who said, aha, wear new clothes or have a new fruit when you're getting the vaccine. Solve all problems. I hate those answers. I really do. They really drive me a shtickle crazy. But people do it all the time. They do it at weddings also because there's a question. You say Shechayanu at a wedding, right? So some people say, aha, what do? You wear a new talis at the wedding and say Shechayanu on the talis. Okay, fine. I mean,
why are you saying that?
This is a classic solution in halacha. I don't love it, but it's.
I know, but it seems like multiple I don't know.
Yes.
Words logic.
Yes. 100%. I didn't say it was great. Okay, but that's Isser Shechayanu. What about malacha? So really, there's no Isser to do malacha on Purim, but there are places where they have a minhag to not do it. So within the people of a minhag not to do malacha on Purim, so which day does it apply to? Definitely Shabbos. That's not controversial. Thank you. So the Rajba says, look, even the people who have a minhag not to do malacha, that's limited to when they do it bismana. And therefore, for people in Yerushalayim, this Friday, there's no problem doing malacha, even if they had such a minhag. That's what the Rajba said. However, there are some, Mordechai quotes who say that maybe the minhag was on the day of Kriyat HaMegillah, and therefore, if you have the minhag not to do malacha, then it would be on Friday, not Shabbat. You definitely have an Isra malacha, that's not the question, but they would do it on Friday. Everybody agrees, presumably, that on Sunday there is no problem, and yet there's still some people who have a minhag to not do malacha from Chatzot and on Sunday when they're going to be involved in the Suda. I guess to focus themselves on the Suda. Or at least while they're doing the meal to not do malacha then. Okay, I don't know. I don't know exactly. Whatever the minhag is. Okay. And then what about Avelut? So, right, in general on Purim, Avelut applies B'tzina but not B'farhesya, meaning private expressions of Avelut continue but not public ones. So how does that express itself here? So Rav Ovadia says the same thing therefore would be true even on Friday, the day when you're reading the Megillah. You shouldn't have a public display of mourning. It's happy enough that that's not the right thing to do. Rav Ovadia and Rav Elyashiv think that on Sunday, when it's only the day of the Suda, but it's definitely not Purim according to anybody, then Avelut applies normally both in public and in private. However, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says no. Since in the end of the day it may not be Purim, but what is it? It's the Yom HaSeudah. It's a public day of partying. So even if it's not Purim, that's still a nazima to a public display of mourning. And therefore he writes that Avelut B'farhesya should not apply in public, and he notes that is also the position of Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, and Rav Rimon thinks that that's how you should paskin. Okay, so let's just summarize what we've seen and all the different ones. So when you have a Purim Meshulash like this year, so Mikra Megillah, everybody agrees, is on Friday. That's not the question, right? What we saw is a suffix into A, is it part of the original takana or not? Which may be a machloket Rabbah and Rav Yosef. Rabbah, who thinks it's because of carrying, would say, no, it's not the Ikar takana. Rav Yosef might think it's part of the original takana. And even if you think it's not part of the original takana, we had a related question: is it considered zmana or shelo b'zmana? On the one hand, maybe you'd say it's not zmana. On the other hand, you might say it's zmana because because in the end of the day, your dalit is different. Your dalit is yom kriya lakal. What's the nafkamina? So a few nafkaminas. One nafkamina is that there's a higher level of need for a minyan when it's shelo b'zmana, either a high level of lechatchila versus a low level of lechatchila v'rovam, or actually ma'akev. So if you think it's shelo b'zmana, so then you have that higher level of minyan, whatever it is. That may relate to the question of whether women can do their own minyan or not, right? Because if you hold that you need a minyan, so then you have to figure out whether women count as a minyan for these purposes. No, you're not taking pictures. I don't want any pictures, thanks. No, bayatam. No, bayatam. He's trying. I've had all these people trying to sneak pictures to put them in a Purim something. I don't need any of this narrative kind of, no sneak pictures for Purim things. I don't need like Purim paparazzi. It's weird. Fine. So we saw the possible nafkamina for that for women, and we discussed a few other nafkaminas, didn't we? Okay. Think what we actually discussed, right? We dealt with the minyan question, we dealt with the women, the katan, right? The child who becomes bar mitzvah on Sunday, did he miss his chance, on Shabbos, did he miss his chance, or does he actually have to read on Shabbos? Fine. Then we dealt, Matan Levyonim, everyone agrees, is with Megillah. The way Rav Ovadia claims is because since you are thinking about the nays, that's when people are the most generous. I really don't understand whether that's true, but maybe it is, right? I would have thought people were more generous in the Suda when they're drinking or whatever, but okay. But it's definitely clear halachically that Matan Levyonim is linked to Mikra Megillah, so that's definitely done on Friday. What about Suda? So Suda, as we saw, there are those who say that Lo Ma'achrin, right? And they read the Yerushalmi as saying lo ma'achar, and even in the case of krachim, right? That's what it's talking about, and therefore you can't do it on Sunday, presumably because they think it integrates into the day with Megillah or something like that. Others say no, it is more flexible and can be on Sunday. The limit of lo ya'avor is only to Kriyat HaMegillah. That is the minhag, to have it on Sunday. Others say you have to do it on Shabbos, and they reject the Yerushalmi, like the Ritva. The reason not to do it on Shabbos was either Eim Arvin Simcha B'Simcha, which depends on there being a Simcha for Shabbat, or it's a Pigia in Shabbat, right? For example, Rosh Hashanah Kluger, who says being drunk makes you that you can't remember Shabbat, you can't do the kind of Zachar, Pigia in Shabbat, or the way the Ritva said, no, it's a Pigia in the way he understood the Yerushalmi. He doesn't pass this way, but the way I understand Yerushalmi, it's a Pigia on Purim, because the Suda is not Nikar, right? You don't make it clear that the Suda is for the purpose of Purim, and they're all trying to interpret the line in the Yerushalmi of the difference between Simcha Tluya B'Beitin and Simcha Tluya, which is Tluya in you. And then there are those who say, no, you do it on Friday, right? You do it on Friday. And there are some who have compromised positions, like the Iker Mitzvah is on Sunday. Rami, 1 minute. Well, I'm just summarizing it. I know you have a meeting. But just so everything's clear, right? And some say you're machmir and you do a little bit on Friday, a little bit on Shabbos, a little bit on Sunday, right? You like add something to your Suda. Fine, which we said, being machmir only makes sense using Tepigia in Purim, because then I'm going to do it on Shabbat, but I'll do it again on Purim. But if you're using Tepigia on Shabbat, then it's wrong to contribute to the Suda on Shabbat as a Suda Purim. Fine. Then today we don't Mishloach Manot. We said at one level it might depend on whether it's linked conceptually to Suda. If it is, then it goes whenever you do Suda. So if you think it's Sunday, Sunday. If you think Friday, Friday. If you think Shabbos, Shabbos. If you think it's separate, so then it might be that you do it Bo Bayom on Friday, on Shabbos. And there are some people, Lamaisa, that are Machmir, the Iker day is probably Sunday, but some people will also give on Friday, like Chazon Ish or Bidi Eved. If you gave on Friday, it's enough. That's Rav Avadia's position. Fine. If you think about Marba Shalom Barayot, it's presumably not linked to the Suda, and then maybe the right day is Friday, maybe the right day is Shabbos. Chazon Ish thinks it's linked to Matanot Levyonim, and therefore he puts it on Friday. Technical problem in Shemay Yanu, since normally we have in mind all the mitzvot. If you're doing yourself Manot not on the day of Kriyat Megillah, what do you do? So either have in mind on Friday when you're saying Shechayanu to include Mishloach Manot whenever you give it, or wear some new clothes and hedge. Al Hanisim, conceptually, the Beis Yosef thinks should be on Shabbos, so that's Ikar Yom, right? I'm sorry. The minhag is to do on Shabbos is Ikar Yom. Conceptually, Beis Yosef thinks it should be Friday, but that's not the accepted minhag. But it is accepted that if you accidentally say it on Friday or on Sunday, so you don't have to repeat. But on Sunday, during the Suda, some people do it at Harachaman, at least to make it a more Sudas Purim. Avelut, normally Avelut is, again, is done, is not canceled, but it's not done before Hesya. So which one is it? So there we saw Machloket about Sunday, between Rabbi Yashiv and Rav Avadia on the one hand, and Shlomo Zalman on the other.
Wait, Rabbi Yashiv.
No, like Yosef Shalom Yashiv, right? Like, anyway, but that's that, and the Zavelot Al Nisim Shechayanu. I think we've covered it. Okay, so that's your summary of all the issues that have to do with Purim Meshulash. If you want more on it, you can, borrow the book. There are plenty of books just on it. Fine, but those are the issues in it. And tomorrow we are